Before we begin with this review of Darktrip, I must disclose that a key for this game was provided by Keymailer and publisher iTales VR. Don't expect me to go easy on this one in light of receiving a copy. We don't do that here at Escape Route British. I hope I don't burn any bridges here, but we'll see. When things refer to themselves as controversial, I always cringe a little. It's shocking for shocking's sake, like the video nasty movement. I'll be the first to admit I like me some schlock, especially cheaply made low-budget films with ambition in spades. But here I can't help but be skeptical. Just how controversial is the most controversial game, Dark Rift? Well, somewhat. It will be difficult to explain Dark Rift in a way that avoids triggering the yellow monetization icon here on YouTube. It features sensitive subject matter and doesn't shy away from the topic of drug use. Dark Rift is a psychological horror game released into early access on the MetaQuest store for Quest 2 and Quest 3, 3S, and Pro. You play as a private investigator who, during his research, stumbles across an underground laboratory beneath an abandoned house. It is revealed through documents, photographs, and puzzles that a scientist from World War II-era Central Europe, who happened to be a bad man working for a National Socialist political movement, has been conducting experiments in this laboratory using psychedelic drugs and sadomasochism. You could cut yourself on all the edge, but these days it'll take a lot more than bondage gear, knocking back questionable narcotics, and some historical fascists to get yourself a label of most controversial game for the Quest. No, what I find controversial in this game is the heavy use of generative AI. Dark Rift uses generative AI for the game's collectible photographs, the music featured in the game, and likely other elements that I haven't clocked yet. The MetaQuest store does not currently require developers to make a disclosure about their use of AI in their games, and there is no mention anywhere of AI use on the Metastore or on iTales VR's Darktrip page at the time of writing. What that page does do, however, is talk the game up quite significantly. Use VR to immerse yourself into psychedelic experiences. Solve twisted riddles in a surrealistic setting of physical and mental torture. This might be describing the game Dark Rift could eventually become, but as it currently stands, these statements simply don't match what I have played. But we'll get to that. So let's go over how Dark Rift plays. It's an escape room type game, and a fairly simple one at that. The goal in each area is to find the exit. In order to do this, you must complete a standard horror game puzzle, such as filling a tank with gas and turning a crank, or attaching a hook to a chain in order to open up a manhole, though they do get more interesting later on. While simple, this is the most compelling part of Dark Rift for me, since it requires me to use my grey matter to solve the puzzles. As you complete each puzzle and go to each following area, you can often see the last area through a window or doorway, which lends to the feeling that you're actually exploring this abandoned house and laboratory. There is a sense of progression between each area, and I'm totally into that. Immersion in VR games is the big thing the format has going for it compared to other flat games. And when it is done right here, it's really compelling. Even the little things, like objects moving in the corner of your peripheral vision, there's a great sense of unease that Dark Rift nails. Dark Rift's unique mechanic, and one I have yet to see in video games due to its controversial nature, is that you can choose to take drugs as the player to alter your perception. When you do inject the drugs, mimicked by bringing the pill bottle up to your mouth and tilting back your head, various elements of the game's environment become active. A shed may turn into a statue, giant eyeballs may appear on the walls and ceilings. Is it cool? Yeah, I really like this mechanic, and if utilised in more depth, that's something that can really make Dark Rift stand out amongst its competition. Taking the pills can also make certain collectibles appear in the environment, encouraging multiple playthroughs. The game begins in a fairly benign way, but starts to get more twisted once you get into the house proper. In a rather well-kept room, a set of panels adorn the walls, and there's a chalkboard in the corner. A recently singed piece of paper and a lit cigarette tells the player they are not alone, and that someone or something is trying to burn the puzzle clues to stop their progress. When you place the film reel on the chair in the corner onto the projector, a chair appears in the center of the room, and when you play the record found in the drawer here, a 3D model of a woman in full masochist gear appears in the chair, while an AI-generated song about penetration plays. The puzzles on the wall, when completed, reveal artworks of naked women being tortured, or, well, penetrated. And all that goodwill the game cooks up with its puzzles, gone in an instant with this try-hard, attention-seeking power play. Moments like these are Darktrip's equivalent to a child screaming in the supermarket. They're doing it for attention, and it's because it makes their parents uncomfortable. However, that child just doesn't realise how juvenile and ridiculous it makes them look. But at the same time, would it be wild of me to say that this is also exactly when Darktrip managed to dig its claws into me? Because it's so goddamn brazen of the developers to make a game like this. Like a car crash on the highway, you just have to turn and look as you drive by. It's that morbid curiosity, but I also feel like Darktrip blows its load too early here, mind the choice of wording there. Because the game dials back on the overt themes until the very last room of the current early access build. The final room is a bedroom belonging to a young girl. The puzzles in here involve finding and attaching severed dolls' heads back onto dolls that are impaled on a dreamcatcher-like object connected to the ceiling. The room is solved by switching dials on the radio to change between states of the room, where the dolls' heads can be found. A Rubik-style rotating cube puzzle found nearby can be inserted into the ground to reveal a crank, and you can use that to rotate the room, making the whole place fall apart. This room, and the puzzles within it, show the true promise of Dark Rift, but it is only 1/8 of what is currently featured in the game, and the time taken to get to this puzzle doesn't necessarily match the payoff. So I take us back to the website's description, Twisted Riddles. If by twisted riddles they mean rotate these items or smash this glass, then yes, they're twisted riddles. But they're not. Like I said, I think what's written there on the website is more of an idealized representation of what the developers ultimately envision Darktrip to eventually be. And that's fine. I have no doubts that a fantastic, lengthy horror puzzle game can be achieved based on this, shall we say, vertical slice that I've been very graciously allowed to play, but it's also a vertical slice that comes with a price tag. The office scene and bedroom scene are where this early access version of Dark Rift really shows its best hand, being loud, being weird, and being, by all accounts, absolutely uncomfortable. Looking into developer Alexander Nasinov's experience in game design, it seems almost wild to me that someone with his experience is making a game like this, when they have worked on successful and polished games like Gloomhaven and EverQuest 2, but then it hit me. This is one of those personal passion project type games, and no amount of telling anyone no will stop a game like this being made. And, if I may also add, games like these are precisely the kind of thing we need more of. Brash, blatant, in-your-face, impertinent games. Stuff not afraid to take risks. It's a shame, but as it currently stands, I do not feel comfortable recommending Darktrip. At least for as long as the AI-generated collectibles and songs are used within the game. I can accept their existence as placeholders while a game is in development and acquires funding through this model. Once they are removed, if they are removed, the game would be an easy recommendation then. And a recommendation to whom, you ask? Well, to anybody who wants to be very confused, angry, and maybe even slightly turned on at the same time. I don't want it to seem like I'm being harsh. Darktrip has a lot going for it. It is visually impressive. The puzzles are good, even if they are a bit basic. The concept of taking the drugs to change the environment around you is something I still haven't really seen done in a video game, unless somebody can tell me a video game it's happened in that I don't remember seeing it in. And it's very clearly a passion project. When I say I don't recommend it based on its use of generative AI, that is a very personal thing to me. And I can definitely still see the value in Darktrip despite its use of generative AI. It's just, on a personal level, I can't recommend the game for that reason. That's not to say the game doesn't show promise, because it does. There is an immense amount of potential in this. The developer is very responsive to feedback and is always available to answer questions on the Discord. Personally, I can't recommend it while it is using what I believe to be excessive amounts of generative AI. Then again, that is in part the future of how independent video game development is going. There's going to be a lot more AI in everything that releases. That doesn't forgive it, but at least I can understand why it's being used here. But I would personally feel better if iTales put some money into replacing the assets with assets that were actually made by a human being. When I say I don't recommend the game, it is solely on its use of generative AI, and if you're not bothered by that, if that doesn't bother you and you like what you see, by all means check out the early access version on MetaQuest, because the developer is very responsive to feedback and is always available to provide help. I will continue to keep a close eye on Darktrip while it is in development, and stay up to speed with the game's development on their Discord server. I wish Alexander the very best of luck with the rest of Darktrip's development. Once again, thank you very much Keymailer and iTales VR for the key. You've been watching Escape from British. Until next time, if we live that long.